Hi, I'm Dr. Doreen Downing, host of the Find Your Voice, Change Your Life podcast series. And I once suffered from stage fright. And so I know what it's like to have missed out on opportunities, especially early on when I was building my business. I was too afraid to step into the spotlight. So in this podcast series, I've invited people who have had that same experience and most likely, like I did, found my way out. It's like Michelangelo says, the angel's always in the marble. And so once we find our voices and we're then able to give our gifts out to the world, we have a voice finally that not only promotes what we love in our hearts and what we want to share, it also grows our businesses. So today I'm very pleased to introduce and welcome a friend of mine, Wilton Rogers III, and to also say that what I've done this past month is to meet Wilton through a video series that we've done on LinkedIn, a challenge. So every day, almost every day, he says it's 26 out of 30, something like that, or 24, every day showing up to share his passion, share his life personally as well as professionally. So professionally, what I've learned so far about Wilton is that he is into automation, automating businesses, and he's a leader in that. And what I've learned is something called RPA, Robotic Processing Automation. And it's going to be the wave of the future. I mean, the future is already here, apparently. And so, but he'll talk more about that, I'm sure, as we go on. But I want to first welcome you, Wilton, and say thank you for sharing your personal story about your fear of speaking and how you came through it. Let's just first say, we'll start with how it was for you when you struggled and what you understand about what kept you in that struggle or what was the cause of that.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first of all, thank you for having me on here. It's a pleasure to be on here with you. Yeah, well, when you first talking about fear, a lot of your videos caught me because a lot of things you were talking about resonated with me, and I really understood what you were saying. I'm like, oh, I remember that. Oh, I remember that. Yes, I had to go through that. So a lot of what you were talking about is so real to me, and it hit home, and it brought up some things in my past that I remember having to go through. And I think one of the reasons why I had fear growing up, first of all, growing up in the '70s, just gave away my age. So, growing up, I was going to middle school. I mean, elementary school in the '70s, and I didn't know how to read, and I loved to, and I was like, I love to read, but I just couldn't understand it.
Um,
And throughout my whole middle school, and we lived in a rural area, so we didn't have access to a lot of, the city where you could just figure out what the problem is, go to specialists and things like that. Even back then, you really didn't have very many options like you do now. It wasn't until later on that I found out that I have dyslexia. So I was always fearful of talking, of reading, of everything. So in other words, when I used to be able to tell each teacher when they back then they used to call on you by rows, or if they didn't call on you on rows and they just point to a person, hey, now you read. I used to always try to read ahead of the person um, to make sure that I could understand what I could read. And every time it came to me, I failed. So I finally got the courage to tell them I can't read. I said, I'm trying to read, but I don't understand how to read it. Can you please not call on me because I can't? And so what I found out is just ways to work around that. And that was more like my sister was a great reader. So she was my audiobook back in the '70s and '80s, right? So she was my audiobook. But as I got older, being able to, and I did well in school. I did great in math, but anything had to do with reading or anything, like I love history, but my sister would read to me and I could visualize what was going on in my head. So in history class, I was always raising my hand. But when it came down to tests, I would do horrible because I was just didn't understand it. But what I really found out was as I got older to really figure out how to overcome what I was doing. When it came to any type of reading, when it came to, it was like, okay, you have to spend more time doing this in order to be able to be successful in this. And what I found out when I was starting to talk, I love being an entrepreneur. I was an entrepreneur since I was selling eggs at age 7 years old. So I loved being an entrepreneur. So I always had a business. Even in high school, I had a business. In college, I had a business. And as I got older, I started really building businesses, and then I started selling them. So, it just became like, oh, I love this, right? But as I started seeing the opportunities come, people started asking me to speak more about how I did it. I was like a deer in headlights, and I just
Yeah.
couldn't do it.
Yes.
And I just remember one of my mentors that reached out to me, and I call him a mentor now, that he was just one of my dad's close friends, and he was a professor at the university. And I was supposed to do a presentation for his class. And I just told him I can't do it because I don't know what to say. And so I told him my situation, and he goes, "You already know what to say. You don't need to write things down like everybody else. You see everybody taking notes and do everything. Memorize it." I was like, "Memorize it?" He goes, "It comes natural to you. You're talking about it now. Memorize it." And as I start trying to figure out how to memorize it, at first I did my bullet points, and I was always in a presentation, I would lose my spot on bullet points. But then I figured, okay, I got to memorize these. So I started memorizing it, and it just started hitting, and it started hitting, and started hitting. And the more I did it, the more comfortable I got, and that fear started to slip away. And so everything that I do now, it's more, I have to do my research, or I already know about it, and I'm very consistent about it, and it comes natural. Because if you just throw me out on the, if you throw a book at me right now and tell me to read it, I would have trouble reading it. But if you allow me to read through it a couple of times, I can sit down here and put the book down, and sit down and talk to you about the whole conversation on what page that was, what page this was, because now I know how to memorize. So that's how I overcame my fear.
Oh, what a story. I've never heard anything so unique and creative. And first of all, what I remember what you just said about being young and then speaking up. So that says something about you, that you had the courage to speak up to the teacher and point to what you felt was one of your deficiencies. And I also think that, what you're doing now about automation and processing, when you started out, I mean, it's such a link. You started out with a processing problem,
Right.
right? You had
Exactly.
a problem processing, and now your business is all about processing.
And I think it all plays hand in hand, because I figured out a strategy on how to do that. And then when I understood RPA, I figured out a strategy on how I can help businesses out. So it became like, okay, now I understand it. So, and I knew that the small, medium-sized businesses never had that. It was only in the enterprise world. And I was like, no, I'm going to make it happen in the small, medium-sized businesses. And for years, people told me you couldn't do it, you couldn't do it, you couldn't do it. And now we cracked the code on doing it. And now a lot of these vendors are going, hey, man, we want you to do a presentation for us to understand how you did it. So you're right. It was just figuring out the process back then. And today I still using the same, just in a different way.
And the way that you described your sister as being the audio book, and that you can process information or through, what do they call it? That you could see it visually, orally, and kinesthetically, but visually was not so good for you. But you got to the visualization through listening. So to me, it feels like, as a businessman, you're perfectly positioned to be where people really can't do what you do when they need to do automation for their business. In fact, it feels like you figured out how to automate reading.
I literally read about 2 books a month on my audio. I have
Yeah.
what's
Uh-huh.
it called? I forget what it's called. Audible. It's called
Audible.
Audible. So I read at least two, a minimum of 2 books a
Uh,
month, because I can consume it, and it's really, really it's helped me. It's really helped me.
yeah. So information is out there. And at first it was, I'm not going to say impossible, but at first it felt like very challenging for you to actually be able to take in information and then have it come out through your voice. And what you did along the way feels like it was a problem that you faced. You stood up and said, "Hey, teacher, I can't do this." And then you got creative with your sister. It was just natural that you found a solution. And I think that what you're telling me today, and what I hope the listeners will see, anybody who is struggling, that there are many different ways to come up with a solution to a problem around the fear of speaking. And yours is certainly one of the more creative ones.
And it was, but it was almost, when I was in high school, it was almost forced on me. And I'll tell you why, is because I was sort of, I'm more of a introvert. I really don't like to be around a lot of people. I'm like really to myself. You couldn't tell that if I'm talking to you, but for the most part, my wife will tell you, is like, when she first met me, I was on a stage performing on fitness in front of hundreds of people. And then she thought I was a certain guy. And then when she met me, she's like, "You don't like to go anywhere." I said, "I don't, I'm gonna stay at home." So I like to be that way. But in high school, um, I was the only black kid in my school. So I don't want to be the dumb black kid.
Mhm.
I don't want people to really come out there and say, "Oh man, you can't read, you're dumb, you're this, you're that." So for me, being bullied at a young age, I talked to the teachers like, "Don't put me in that position," you know, because I want to be, and for the most part, they understood that. And I didn't want my parents to be involved with it, because I wasn't that person. I was like, you know what, I think my grandfather told me, when you speak from your heart, people will listen. I remember him telling that when I was very young. He goes, "So tell people, speak from your heart, and don't allow other people to speak for you when you know you can speak for yourself." So at that age, I was like, my grandfather was my idol. I mean, I followed him everywhere. I mean, it doesn't matter where I was, like his little shadow, you know. And so I remember that. And every time I knew that I was in a position where I was going to be in a pickle, where someone might look at me differently, might judge me, I reached out to those my teachers from the beginning. I was like, "Listen, I'm going to take this class, but I'm going to tell you, I can't read. I try to read all the time. I try to do it, but for some reason I can't." Some teachers even told me, "Hey, go get some help over the university. We'll get you this. We'll do that." It wasn't until I was a freshman in college, that sophomore in college, I was going to be a sophomore. My freshman year, I was starting to flunk out in very simple classes, and my coach is like, "Dude, you can't play with us if you flunk out." I
Mm.
told him the situation. He took me to a test, found out I have dyslexia, and then they reversed it and helped me start reading and understanding how to read. So now, I mean, reading is okay for me. I mean, I still get the letters mixed up a little bit, but I can, for the most part, if I see that word over and over, it's already in my head. But if it's something that I'm not used to saying, I haven't said, then it's like, whoa, okay, let me try to piece it all together. So it was a struggle at first. It really was. That fear was, but it was more fearful of people making fun of me when,
Yes.
as I got older. So I reached out to those that can protect me from people making fun of me.
Well, what you just did there, you gave a fabulous word of warning and wisdom, actually, to people who find themselves in such a predicament, that there are resources around them, people who could actually protect or somehow arrange it so that you aren't shamed and put in front of people and be judged pretty severely. So asking for protection, that's wonderful. The other thing I heard you say, which is already speaks to me, is the heart. And I know from your bio and from your last month's videos, there's a way that the voice comes through a heart when there's sincerity and when there's a genuine human being who's not trying to impress, who's not trying to sell, who's not trying to, be more than he is. And I feel like you're that kind of person to me. And I've been very anxious, not anxious, but excited, let's say, about watching your videos, because I know I always, Wilton, come away uplifted. You are an uplifting person. So I'd like to just move into a little bit more around how you can uplift, because you do just naturally, but more technically, RPA, Robotic Processing Automation.
Mhm.
And so I know you did a video training on it earlier today, but you could say just a little bit more about it, because I think you're bringing heart and soul to businesses who need to be able to automate it so that they can then be more creative, like you are creative.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you. Yeah, I think, well, first of all, I think more of the, you know, coming, being authentic, it came from a lot of dark times in my life. And, and I know I can see a hustler when he passes in front of me. So, and I don't like that feeling. And I don't want people to feel that around me. It's like, you know what, I'm not, I want to be someone that can inspire and so encourage and educate in what I can do. In order for me to do that, I have to really know my craft, and I have to really study my craft. That way, if there's questions, I can answer, or I know how to get those answers for them immediately if I can't answer. And with RPA, I feel that way because it was in 2017. um, I was just had sold my business, and I was working for the hotel, and I just sort of like, I didn't know what I wanted to do, and I just can't stay retired. I can't stay, I gotta do something. And the RPA opportunity came, and I heard about it, and I was like, whoa, this is pretty good. I like what RPA is. I still was like hesitant about what it was, but they said it's working. Long story short, the company said, we want you to work for us. They moved my family and I out to Houston, and we started from the scratch and said, we want you to be the VP of sales and marketing. We want you to build this up. Boom, go. Like, okay. So I started learning it, and I started talking to businesses, and I started noticing this is all for enterprise and for the enterprise level. And I was like, I don't feel, that's not something I want to stay in, because as I started talking to them, a lot of them they weren't authentic. They weren't real. It felt like it was just so corporate, right? And there was no feelings behind it. It was all about the data and the numbers, and, in black and white, it was this or nothing, right? And so to me, it was like, I'm not the type of person. I want to build relationships. I want to make sure that people walk away like, wow, thank you. This changed my life. This changed. And I wanted that feeling, because I know for me, it's like, I'm doing my job. And so that's why I said, I got to have RPA in small, medium-sized businesses. So basically, RPA is automating processes that already exist. And we don't change it up. We don't buy a new system. You don't do anything. We just figure out what you're doing manually, and we automate it. And people are so amazed on what have been doing for years, that we turn around and automate it. We had a company that we're doing their fourth process now, but they've been doing the same ones over and over and over, them, the client and their staff, for the last 15 years. We went over there in 2 months and automated everything, and we're saving them over $6,000 a month. Their ROI is like almost 250%. And those employees are so happy, because now they're doing something else and don't have to worry about that. But that was the feeling that I wanted to have for all of our clients. But in small, medium-sized businesses, they had no idea what it was. They're like, they don't understand. And from that point, I was like, okay, I can't sell them, because they're going to think I'm another automation software like anything else that's out there, which we're not. So I had to educate them.
Mhm.
And through education, it's more like, okay, find areas of their business that they can identify. And I've been doing that for 2 years, literally, like constantly for 2 years, just like boom, 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 going at it. And we start seeing a bigger trend starting to pick it up. But once we have some solid clients and we build a process that we can automate real quick, because the turnaround time for automation is usually a couple of months. And I was like, that's way too long for a small business. Small businesses can't afford that. They have to do it immediately, because they're wearing 15 hats, they
Mhm.
start taking off each one of those hats and start automating them, but using none of their time. Like, I don't want to interrupt them. How can I do that? So I put this up. I said, I don't want them to I want to be able to automate in 30 days. And I want to be able to for them to use at least 1 hour a week at the time, no more than 4 hours. I was asking people questions. I was doing everything else. And they're like, it can't be done.
Mm.
Well, you keep trying hard enough, it can be done.
Yeah.
so,
Yeah.
so long story short, I was able to create a blueprint to do that, and I built a team that helped me do that. And of course, we run into a lot of hiccups along the way, but now it's totally solid. And that's why today we had our first webinar, our first real webinar that shows it. And I mean, we had some great responses. I mean, it was pretty amazing. But the feeling that that I'm getting now to helping these type of businesses, it is what was worth the struggle, because I was like, I knew it would happen, because I was that business. I was that business owner that needed this. And if someone would have showed me that, I'd have been like, whoa, this is a game changer for me. It's going to help me and my business. Now I can focus my attention, my staff can focus our attention on this and not on that. We can just take care of that. And now they're starting to understand it more. And now they're calling us, hey, we have another process we want to talk about. So all right, let's sit down and talk about it. That's what I wanted, because now people are like seeing, okay, now I see the benefit of it. And for us, it was never about the money, because for us, like, okay, we want to make it affordable. I mean, they're the typical clients are getting a return on their investment within 3 months, and the rest is just you know pure profit, I guess you could say. So we made it very, very affordable for businesses to do it for them and see that return immediately. And just to see that and seeing the momentum it's getting has been something I've been visualizing for years. So yeah, that's a little bit about RPA and where it's going. And we're the first ones to break into the market, the SMB market, like we have. And now we're getting a lot of national recognition. We're the premier development company for the fastest growing RPA vendor in the world. Now they're reaching out to us to develop all the processes for their clients. So it's been a blessing. It really has.
Oh, just a natural growth. I have a couple other things I want to talk to you about, but before I do that, I want to make sure that you give the website, or where do people go to reach you and find out more? What?
Yeah, it's very simple. My website it's scalethroughautomation.com. That's it.
Scale through
Through
automation.com.
automation.com.
Well, that's the whole point. Scale through automation, isn't it?
That's
So
it. That's it.
and just to see you smiling and so pleased and happy, so my comment was about you being able to go into a business, and it to me feels a little similar to what it's like to go into an area that you can't figure out what to do, which was the dyslexia and the reading. And yet you've had enough experience that there's a way through this. There's another way. I don't know what it is, but I'm going to find it. And that kind of knowing and that strength, that I guess is kind of like, if there's a will, there's a way. Oh, hey, that's you.
That's it. Will. Yeah, you got it.
Yeah, if there's a will, there's a way. That could be your
I used to
motto.
always, I used to always use that. If there's a Wilton, there's a way.
Yeah, if there's a Wilton there. Okay, you got it. I just discovered that myself and
I
listening
love
to
it.
myself. So yes, I think that's the whole point I was making about you having uh, the ability to be able to look at things in a very different way than most of us. Our brains don't work the way yours does. So I think you're going to add even more value to companies. You say small, medium businesses. Is that SMB mean small,
Yeah,
medium?
that's our passion. It's the company's passion. That's our motto. We have enterprise clients, obviously, but I'll probably say about 95% of our clients, or 90% of our clients, are probably SMB right now.
So what's the difference between small and medium? How do you define small and how do you define
There's
medium?
like a big range. I like to qualify it per as far as employees. Anybody like with 50 employees or less to us is considered a small business. Anybody with 50 employees up to like 250, 500 are small businesses. But anybody making like 150 million or more is considered more of an enterprise level, because there's so much red tape you have to go through in order to get things done.
Mhm.
So that's how we classify it. So our strengths, and our love is the small businesses, anyone with 50 employees or less, because those are the ones where we can touch them directly and communicate with them directly without having to go through a lot of red tape just to get the conversation going and get everybody on board.
Yeah, you used another good word, the people that you'd love to work with. And I think that's the key here, is that you're bringing, of all things, love
Yeah.
to business, to small businesses. And I can feel your enthusiasm and your excitement. Wow, isn't it great that people find their voice and this is the whole world benefits? And I guess this is what my podcast is about, is showing people that you may feel like the world is judging you and you have to hold yourself back and you can't figure out that you've got something valuable to say, but there is. And that's, again, the Michelangelo quote, inside is the angel. And all we have to do is know that he or she, they is inside. And so thank you. Anything else you would like to direct us to? Or I know you do a podcast.
We do. We do a podcast. It's a live podcast now. We decided because we were doing a recorded podcast, but we were like 3 months behind on production. And I was like, we don't. By the time we get somebody out there, the information's old. So we just start going live. And now what we're doing with our live podcast is recording that and putting that into production, so they can go back if anyone wants to look at it later on. They can. So we're doing that. We started already. We're doing it every Tuesday and Thursday at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time.
12 Pacific time.
12
Okay.
Pacific, yeah. And so 12 Pacific, 3 Eastern. It's Tuesdays and Thursdays. And we're live on LinkedIn, Facebook, YouTube. If you just go to Skill Through Automation, just Google us there. You'll probably find us, and we'll be plastered there.
All
And
right.
yeah, so that's
And who
about
are
it.
you interviewing for your podcast, your business empowerment podcast?
We interview everyone. I mean, we had Lisa Nichols, the one that was she was an author of the book The Secret.
Yes.
We had her on last week. We had a retired NFL player, paid for Martin Schottenheimer, on a couple of weeks ago. But we're also having just people that specialize in certain areas of their business that can give value to our listeners. So it's not an automation podcast, not at all.
Okay.
It's not technology. It's just really finding out, okay, that person can make a difference to our audience. Let's get them on and see what we can do.
Yeah.
So yeah, so we're touching it. We're pretty much hitting the different industries, and from big to small businesses to mom and pop businesses, you name it, we're hitting it.
Right. What I got about the podcast then is it's part of your play and part of your fun, but also part of just reaching out to the wider world to say, hello, world, here we are. And that to me feels like what you do is also connect people to more of what's possible. So,
That's it. That's
yeah,
it. We love to connect. We love to be able to share what we can do and share the network that we have with others, because it could benefit people. So that's all. That's what we love doing. I mean, we're all in the networking world, and when you really use it to not necessarily benefit you, but to benefit others, the benefit comes back to you tenfold.
yes, that's a great last line. When you benefit others and there you will benefit. It's just a circle, isn't it? A circle of
Good.
love.
That's it. Nothing, looking for nothing in return, but it'll come back to you tenfold for sure.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Wilton.
Thank you for
Bye.
having me. It was a
Oh, you're
pleasure.
welcome. Bye-bye.